Hey geeks, what's going on? My name is Bryn, and as you can see, we're in a familiar setup. Hey guys, so I have recently moved back up to Maine temporarily. We've been getting all set up, so that's sort of why there has been a bit of a delay on this next episode. I also do apologize for sort of the weird setup. I have my old backdrop stuff behind me, but a lot of my stuff is missing due to the move, and the lighting setup isn't as good as it used to be. So things are sort of still in a transitionary period. We'll sort of figure it out as time goes on, but for now, let's jump into this review. We are here for my review of the 4-part, 1-hour special for Steven, Wanted, or split up into the episodes. It was Stranded Together, The Trial, Off Colors, and Lars's Head. So these 4 episodes were really awesome, were very illuminating in a lot of different ways, and then ended in a very interesting and unexpected manner. So we open up at the beginning of this special with Steven being captured by Aquamarine and the Topaz fusion. Aquamarine's super happy that she has Rose Quartz, and Steven's like, yep, you got what you wanted, I'm Rose Quartz, blah blah blah, just trying to make sure that they don't turn around and take the humans back. It's revealed to Steven that Lars was still on the ship and has been grabbed by the other Topaz, who fused back together. Lars is obviously really unhappy about still being on the ship, and Steven sort of expresses his frustration that Lars was still aboard and got captured again, even though he sacrificed himself to try to save as many humans as possible. They get underway to Homeworld, and Steven and Lars have this conversation where Lars sort of expresses his frustration at himself that he was hiding when he should have been trying to get off the ship, and not only was he hiding, he ran away and wasn't able to help Sadie when she really needed him. We talked about that before, that might be the last straw for Sadie, that she may not want to hold out for Lars anymore. And he knows it. He knows there's that risk that he sort of messed up again. And I'm glad that he is aware of that. I'm glad that he's not just sort of always blaming other people, that he's willing to accept that he made a mistake and that that wasn't a good thing for him to do. So I'm glad that we're at least at that part with Lars. His transformation is much more than that as this 4-part series goes on, but we'll get to that. As they're flying, Aquamarine's ship sort of gets all wobbly, and she says that the crystal gems must have damaged it, and tells Topaz to go fix the engine. Steven and Lars go along with her because they've been fused back into their body, and so like they're sticking out. Steven's sticking out of the front, and his legs are in the back. Lars's legs are in the front, and his front is in the back. So they go down there. And Topaz seems to not be listening to them. Doesn't seem to be hearing anything that they say. She doesn't seem to respond, so they feel free to just sort of talk. Steven notices there are those destabilizers and tries to get Lars to help in getting them so they can maybe try to escape. But Lars just feels totally defeated. He doesn't want to really try. He is making things very difficult, and he and Steven sort of get into this argument, and Lars sort of breaks at a certain point and starts, really talking about how frustrated he is about, like, how he's, a wuss, how he was, like, a coward and ran away and hid, how he's scared all the time and how he doesn't want to be scared. And, he's not like Steven, who's brave and able to do all these things. And Steven admits to him, he's like, Lars, I'm afraid too. I don't want to do this. I did it because I wanted to save everyone, and I couldn't even do that. And we have this beautiful moment between them. It's like the realest talk we've actually had between them. Lars has always been sort of pushing Steven away. Steven has been always very loving towards Lars in such a way that I could see why someone of Lars' personality would find that obnoxious. But this is the first time where they really talk to each other. Steven talks about how scared he is, about how he doesn't want to do this thing, but he's given himself up to be taken away from Earth to the terrible leaders of these homeworld gems, where they're going to do awful things to him for something that he didn't even do, and that he's afraid. And that even though it sucks that Lars is in a bad spot, he's glad that he's there so he doesn't have to be alone. And Lars tries to cheer him up, and then Steven's like, you don't have to sugarcoat this, man. You've never done that before. You've always been real with me about how much things suck. And Lars is like, yeah, this sucks. And you have this nice, genuine moment where then that's when Steven says, I'm glad you're here, even though it's sort of a terrible thing to say. And they sort of connect in a nice way, more so than they ever have before. And it's at this point that Topaz peeps up and has been listening to this whole thing and is actually a huge softie. And that I thought that was hilarious. So I was losing it. And so Topaz has this adorable little voice talking about she doesn't know what Topaz would do without Topaz. And there's someone always in the way because they're always getting used to like hold people inside of them when they fuse. And it was this really precious moment where they love that honesty between Lars and Steven, and they want to help. And I just thought this is amazing. This might be an easier solution than we thought. But of course things get complicated. Before Topaz can help them get into an escape pod, Steven says, Lars will get in the escape pod, I will go because if I go back, we're just back to square one. So they're about to escape, and that's when Aquamarine shows back up. And Aquamarine's just like, Topaz, what's going on here? And Topaz, not really thinking to lie, just says exactly what happened. Oh, they did this heartfelt, they spoke to each other from the heart, and it was so wonderful, and you missed it, and I wanted to help them. And Aquamarine is pissed with Topaz, who grabs Aquamarine and one of the destabilizers and has them up against the wall, like at their mercy. And then Aquamarine, being very clever, is just, what are you gonna do? Bring my gem to Homeworld? What are they gonna do to you? They're gonna separate you, and they're gonna shatter you. So Topaz gives up, and we had this moment beforehand where Steven was like, maybe you can help us too. I mean, maybe you're just mean because you're afraid that you're weak or something. We're all sharing. It's okay. And Aquamarine's got this like dead, just like what sort of expression. Like she is just a mean, nasty lady who likes to control people and things. But later, after Topaz surrenders him, he's like, I don't know what I was thinking. Aquamarine actually shows a little bit of kindness and forgiveness. She says, just unfuse, we'll forget this ever happened. Aquamarine has every right, in Homeworld society, to turn her Topaz in and get new guards and have them like rehabilitated or something, or shattered, God forbid. Because, in Homeworld Gem society, everything is about serving a specific purpose and making sure that gets done. And if they're not serving their purpose, then she needs to replace them. So I thought it was cool that we saw that moment of tenderness from Aquamarine, that she's not entirely cold-hearted. I also thought it was interesting the comment that inevitably fusions get sentimental. And I thought it was cool that that's something that happens across all fusions. And maybe why they're encouraged not to stay fused for too long, because I imagine as they do, that new personality from their fusion starts to become more and more aware, and that fusion probably isn't bound up in the same social expectations that the gems that made them are. And so I think it's interesting that occurs, that when even gems of the same type fuse, they don't just become a bigger version of themselves. They do, but that new person still comes about. And I thought that was a really cool revelation. So they land on Homeworld, the Topaz split, and they take Steven and Lars off into different rooms, and that's where the first quarter of the special ends. So the next episode is the trial. We are introduced to a new character which comes into his cell, a Zircon. Now the Zircon is very stuffy, very upright, kind of reminds me a little bit of Pearl and a little bit of Peridot. And is obviously his defense attorney, which is really strange, and seems quite out of sorts out of being assigned to this case. Seemingly not given a lot of time to prepare Steven's case, or Rose Quartz's case, for the act of shattering against a diamond. They are quite frazzled. Moved to the trial, Steven is brought out to this large space, and we see that there's the plaintiff, I think? Plaintiff, defendant? Plaintiff is the, yeah. So we have the plaintiff, which is another Zircon, which serves Yellow Diamond. The defendant's attorney is serving Blue Diamond, as they are color-coded. And the other one seems sort of like Snub's like, defending a traitor, isn't that, treason? And obviously the defense attorney is just like, I was assigned this! I didn't want to do this! So their dynamic is kind of funny. But then we see the pearls for Yellow Diamond and Blue Diamond, who announce the arrival of their diamonds, and they appear. Really cool in this poses, really close together, and they open their eyes, and there's a reason why these entities are in charge. These guys are intimidating. I mean, we've seen them before, but every time they show up, it's just like, especially those eyes with the diamond-shaped pupils. So they appear and they create their thrones and have the trial go underway. The plaintiff goes on and says that, rose quartz shattered pink diamond, this is common knowledge, and here's a human that is part of the world that rose quartz was defending in defense for their destruction of pink diamond. They are loud and obnoxious and terrible, and of course Lars is our example here, and put the little bubble on him and then puts him away and then says, I have an eyewitness that this is in fact rose quartz. We bring in Eyeball, the ruby from the team of rubies, and the one that tried to stab Steven with a knife out in space. And Ruby is quite mad, or Eyeball is quite mad at Steven, and serves as evidence that his identity is in fact rose quartz because Steven proved it to her. Used the healing powers, had the shield, all that sort of stuff. And that's enough for Yellow Diamond. He says, well, that's enough. Time to have them executed. And Blue Diamond is like, no. And before this is sort of that she reiterates something that she had said earlier, in that she wants to hear what Rose Quartz has to say, what they think they're going to do to her, because she wants to do something even worse. She has been affected greatly, which we've seen by her great sadness in previous episodes. She has been affected greatly by the loss of Pink Diamond. She wants to know why this person thought that they could get away with destroying destroying the Pink Diamond, and how they feel about that. She wants closure. She wants justice. Blue Diamond pulls him up on this little pedestal, and he basically confesses. He's like, yeah, I did it. I did it in a fight, and Blue Diamond wants to know how it happened. And Steven describes how he imagines their battle went. He says, I probably did this. Pink Diamond said this, and I was like, no. And then we probably had a fight, and talks about doing some spin kicks or something like that, and mentions he probably would have used the breaking point, which was that gem-shattering weapon that Bismuth had made that we had seen in an earlier episode. And at hearing this, Blue Diamond is like, a sword, and gets all upset. And we see that her empathic powers can affect a lot of people, not just Steven. And there's this wave of blue. We see that it affects everyone. Even Yellow Diamond, there are tears that appear in her eyes. It affects the pearls, it affects Steven, it affects everybody. I don't know if it affected... I don't think it affected Lars. I don't think it only affects gems. Blue Diamond is obviously distraught by this. And this devastation, Yellow Diamond is like, well, that's enough out of you. We'll take a short recess and then we'll reconvene. So Steven's off in his little holding cell with his defense attorney. And so what is all this about I might have, and this is probably... And Steven just sort of admits, I don't know what happened. Rose Quartz did this thing and I have her gems, so... And his Zircon defense attorney is quite intrigued by this. That he doesn't know what happened. And then she realizes, using the evidence that they have on hand, that they've been told on Homeworld, that the story that they have doesn't make any sense. That's why they want Steven to tell them how it happened. Blue Diamond doesn't understand how it could have happened. That's why she wants Rose Quartz to explain it to her, so she can understand how this seemingly impossible thing occurred. And I think it's even less about a diamond shattering being an impossible deed. I think at this point the circumstances surrounding the shattering of Pink Diamond don't make sense to Blue Diamond. And so she wants to understand. And so then we come to Steven's defense. His Zircon comes forward and begins telling this story. And this is the part where things get really illuminating, things that I hadn't thought of, because they have access to information that we don't. So they ask to bring up Blue Diamond's palanquin. They bring it up, and the Zircon is like, so the story goes that Pink Diamond was slain just a few steps from her palanquin and was struck from the front, killed by Rose Quartz. And Blue Diamond's like, oh, yes, very dramatic. And then goes on to say, how did this happen? At the time of Pink Diamond's shattering, Rose Quartz had been an enemy, a well-known enemy to the Homeworld and to the Diamonds for a long time. I think over 100 years. And so she would have been identified. The other Rose Quartz weren't part of Pink Diamond's guard. They weren't part of her entourage. And so this Zircon is now saying, like, so how did she get past them? How did she get past all of her agate guards? How did she get past the sapphires? How did her pearl not cry out in alarm, look out, Pink Diamond? And all of these are all really good questions, because not only was Pink Diamond convinced to come out of her palanquin, but none of her attendants that would have been there seemed to stop this rose quartz to getting in front of her. That it's possible that she could have snuck up and done that, or fought her way forward. But for a Pink Diamond, who they're very powerful, obviously, to be seemingly caught off guard in such a manner seemed very strange. And the Zircon starts getting fired up and going into this story. And Blue Diamond is totally invested in this. And, you know, I've been wondering these same things. And Steven's like, this is odd. That Zircon points out that someone would have had to have convinced Pink Diamond to come out of her palanquin. Someone that she would have trusted in order to do that. We've seen in flashbacks and in stories how defended they are, especially in the episode The Answer. We see how surrounded a diamond is, and how when danger comes, they are very quickly whisked away. So someone would have been able to get close to the palanquin, convince Pink Diamond to come out of the palanquin, get past the guards and get close enough that not even her pearl attendant, who was never away from her side, wouldn't have raised an alarm, killed Pink Diamond, or shattered Pink Diamond, and then been powerful enough to cover it up. And then the Zircon says, someone like you, and then points at the two diamonds. And it's just like, whoa, was this an inside job? Like, Blue Diamond is obviously distraught over this. And either they're doing like a red herring thing and Blue Diamond did it, or Yellow Diamond did it for some reason. She doesn't seem as torn up about this. She's been telling Blue Diamond to get over this and to move on. And Yellow Diamond gets mad. She stands up, and the Zircon's like, sorry, I'm just getting fired up, you know, forget that last statement, and gets poofed. The plaintiff attorney is just like, haha, case closed, right? And Yellow Diamond turns and zaps her. Which also, I just wanted to point out something interesting, that the destabilizers use the same energy that we see Yellow Diamond use to poof that Zircon. That it's like an electrical shot that causes these like almost grid lines to appear that sort of breaks up a gem's physical form into like little sections. I'm interested if the destabilizers are based off of her specific power. But anyway, she poofs both of them, and Blue Diamond's like, what are you doing? Stop that. And Yellow Diamond's like, we don't need to hear this. This is nonsense. Why don't we just execute them already? And Blue Diamond's like, you need to control yourself. So they're getting into this debate now, this big argument. And that's when Steven takes Lars and they run for the palanquin of Blue Diamond's. And while they're arguing, Steven manages to get it going, and they jump out, and we get to see our first glimpse of Homeworld. We see these massive skyscrapers, these strange-looking highways and streets, and then this massive statue that marks the background. A statue that I assume is Pink Diamond. And then they start falling, and we see Yellow Diamond, as they're falling, blows out this wall and says that you were able to stand your ground on that rock called Earth, but you're on our world now. And you get this nice shadow, really intimidating, as he and Lars plummet far, far below. And then we cut to black. And that's where the trial ends. So I want to sort of break up this hour into two different halves and sort of talk about my thoughts and analyses about them. Because I think the overarching plot and theme for those things are sort of separate. And I think we should handle them separately. So this first half of this hour special, I think the big part of it is in the trial. The first part is a nice setup to sort of bring us into what is going to become Lars's new arc, which gets resolved in the next two episodes, but sort of resolves in one way, is the end to one part of his arc and the beginning to a new one. It's the end of his arc in sort of feeling in constant conflict with Steven. We've had a couple episodes where he and Steven resolve the episode and seem to get closer to each other, but he always seems to revert back to being, frustrated and trying to be aloof and cool, but being angry mostly at himself, but taking it out on other people. And in this first part of this special, we see that he and Steven get into this, argument, And Lars talks about how he doesn't like being scared all the time, how that really affects him. You know, he was scared of having people try his food. He was scared of his baking, that he didn't go to the party. And, you know, he wasn't just kidnapped beforehand. He wasn't going to go to the party anyway. He ran away, and that's when he got kidnapped. And how he's like, you know, Steven's never afraid. And part of this frustration is probably during this whole time is that Lars wishes he could be more like Steven. He wishes he could be not afraid, that he could be happy and just go into everything the way Steven does. Lars wants to do that, but he can't, and he really struggles with that, and it makes him mad at Steven. And it sort of illuminates a lot of his behavior towards him, is in that frustration and turning it into anger against Steven. Which then causes the moment that when Steven says, like, I am afraid, like, I don't want to do this, I'm terrified, sort of illuminating to Lars that Steven is afraid, that you can be afraid and still do something. You don't have to just run away, but that it's okay to be afraid. That gets brought up again in a later episode in a more direct way, but its seeds are planted in that moment. And that's when Lars and Steven start to understand each other. Steven says, you know, don't sugarcoat it. You've always been real with me about how things suck. He doesn't want Lars to stop being Lars. He just wants Lars to understand that it's okay to be afraid, that he can come to terms with that being afraid isn't a bad thing. It doesn't make him a wuss. It's just, you know, learning how to deal with that, how to handle it and push past it. And Lars and he come to a new understanding of each other and a new appreciation for each other's faults and strengths. So we have that awesome moment, and we also get to see Topaz react, which was really fun. I liked seeing that there was a character there, and that plus how Aquamarine reacts to Topaz's betrayal is really interesting. We're seeing more and more with every other homeworld gem that we are introduced to. It very much felt like for a long time that the crystal gems were the exceptions, but that most homeworld gems were not only part of this hierarchical society where everyone had a specific role, but that they were happy in those roles, that they wanted to be good at these things. We had Peridot and Jasper as good examples, that they were very proud of their position within the caste system of Homeworld. But then the more we see it, when we went to the human zoo, we saw all those other quartz gems, the other amethysts and jaspers from Earth that were a little off. And, you know, part of it might have been that they were from Earth and that's what made them sort of quirky. But we also saw that the head of the zoo had some flaws too, that these gems are actually more human than they might like to believe. And that's, you know, they're characters written and animated and directed by humans, and so we sort of, our personalities come through in the characters. But I thought that was interesting, and then this episode and forward, we really start to see that it's not just in their personalities, but that some of these gems don't like the roles that have been chosen for them. And there's a reason why Rose Quartz was able to raise such an army. They weren't just a select few. I think this is a trend throughout many gems, that they're not satisfied with their place in the caste system, that they're not happy with the Diamond Authority. We see that in Topaz's seeming reluctance to go on these missions and desire to express the emotions that she feels with the two parts of herself. And we see it in Aquamarine, who, while still very mean and seemingly cruel, has a soft spot for their Topaz guards. She could have easily had them replaced, had them shattered for all she cared. But she said, just separate. We'll pretend like this never happened. That forgiveness doesn't really have a place in a very rigid caste system where everyone has a specific purpose, where everyone's a cog in the machine. If a cog breaks, you replace it. But Aquamarine doesn't treat a Topaz like a cog. She treats him like a person, like a friend. Move forward to the trial, and we have this Zircon sort of reveal parts of the destruction of Pink Diamond that we didn't know before. We all took it for granted when characters told us that Rose Quartz shattered Pink Diamond, and the crystal gems seemed to corroborate that story. We had no reason to disagree with them. They're sort of the vessels for which we get information about Homeworld. But the signal obviously has a little bit of static in it. They may not have been there when Rose Quartz did it. I don't think they were. I don't think, thinking back on those other episodes, I don't think any of them were there. So everyone just accepted that Rose Quartz had done this terrible thing. But then through the story that comes out, we are getting pieces of information from Homeworld that is now making me doubt that Rose Quartz did it. Maybe Rose Quartz didn't know she was being blamed for Pink Diamond's shattering. Maybe she actually did do it, but maybe she didn't do it alone. Or it's possible that she didn't do it, heard that people were saying she did it, but took on the blame anyway. That maybe it would help keep Homeworld away from Earth if they were afraid of a Rose Quartz that was able to shatter a diamond. Anyway, the revelation that perhaps it wasn't Rose Quartz after all, that it might have been one of the diamonds, that it might have been Yellow Diamond, and that this whole thing has been a cover-up, is huge. Has huge implications for the war with Crystal Gems. Has huge implications for how this might affect Homeworld in the future. So many things I had to think about. I had to reanalyze about how I thought that story went. And it was a really cool moment. And I feel like parts of those thoughts that Yellow Diamond might be behind this is sort of confirmed in her response. She immediately strikes down these two Zircons. One of them being the one who said it, but took it back. But it didn't matter. Yellow Diamond wanted that silenced and then turned around and took out the other Zircon. These are two people who just witnessed that statement be said that makes a lot of sense and just gone. That's suspicious behavior. And I think Blue Diamond may realize it in time. I think she's still, things aren't quite clear for her because she's still sort of drowning in grief. But that revelation is there. And I think Steven has picked up on it in a way because he really thought, wow, this doesn't make any sense at all. And we might see him sort of relieve himself of some of the guilt that he was throwing on himself and on Rose Quartz. Because he was also, later in the next episode, spoilers, willing to escape back to Earth. Even though that might mean that the diamonds might come for him and his friends. Because I don't think he truly believes that Rose Quartz, and him by extension, are guilty. I thought these episodes were great. I liked the emotional beat with him and Lars. And I liked this big revelation that we had. I thought it was really cool. I liked seeing Yellow Diamond and Blue Diamond interact more. I love seeing these characters who are spoken of as perfect gods interacting as humans. I think it's so cool to hear about a character from someone within the world who sees them as almost a deity, as a perfect being, and then to see them in actuality and see those flaws is always super, super cool. And just good writing and pacing and storytelling from those on the creative side of the show. So, awesome stuff. We're going to get into the second half of this special in our next review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys enjoyed this special. Comment your thoughts on the first half of the special down below in case people haven't seen it but wanted to see this review. If you guys enjoyed my review of it, make sure to like this video and subscribe for future content. Us guys at the Geek XP are putting up new stuff all the time, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You guys have been awarded some Geek XP, and until next time, stay geeky, my friends.